Good evening, hello and good morning for those of you that are tuning in from a different time zone. I'm very excited to welcome you to the Forecast Festival 4, which for our audience will be entirely digital, while at the same time each single work has been realized physically here at Radialsystem in Berlin. Some of them with the artist actually being present. We are being hosted by the amazing staff of Radialsystem, whose artistic director Matthias Mohr is with us tonight.
Thanks a lot, Freo. We are also very thrilled to welcome Forecast back here at Radialsystem and to continue this wonderful collaboration. And of course, we are already very excited about exploring the works of this festival's edition.
Now, I'm very happy to hand over to our wonderful moderators, cultural writer Kimberly Bradley and Common Ground talk show host Soraya Sahardi-Nelson, who will both guide you through the next 2 evenings of the Forecast Festival 4.
During this festival, you will see 6 projects developed under the guidance of 6 mentors that tackle subjects ranging from racism to immortality to the climate crisis.
After each project, the mentees, their mentor, and an interlocutor they've chosen will discuss the deeper meaning and challenges of their projects. After that discussion, we'll have a Q&A with the audience, and you're invited to write your questions in the chat box on your screen.
So let us begin.
Nairobi, December 12, 1963. With cries of Uhuru, East Africa celebrates its independence. Uhuru is a new word. It means freedom.
The things you learn to deny come back to haunt you. Uhuru, freedom, a word that feels dirty in my mouth. This savior taught me to traffic truth and look away from it as though it would burn my eyes. We learn to live through the drought, though we have forgotten how to read the stars that tell us when it is coming. Maji yakisha mwagika hayazoleki. Spilled water cannot be gathered.
Yet everyone agrees with Jomo Kenyatta, accused of being the mastermind behind the Mau Mau, but beloved as the incarnation of Uhuru. I like the English, he once said, in England. The whites must go. Africa is for Africans. However, a few months later, he himself will be the one to uphold the rights of the white people who were courageous enough to remain in Kenya. He will become one of the best protectors they have.
He is the one we grew up calling Baba, Father. We wave polyester flags at him from the edge of the plantation, and he leaves us, brown uniforms and safari boots, in a plume of dust so thick it makes the air sticky and slow. We see it. We see him on TV saying he loves us, and we learn to sing songs in his praise. This is how you raise children who are afraid all the time. This is how you teach them silence. This is how they learn that they are exceptionally unexceptional. To be learned by heart, children, sing. Tawala Kenya, Tawala, Tawala Kenya, Tawala, Rais Moi. Tawala Kenya, Tawala, Tawala Kenya, Tawala, Rais Moi, Tawala Kenya, unaongoza vyema, unaongoza vyema, Rais Moi, Tawala. Be in power, dominate, reign, manage, govern, rule.
Seeing's believing, but if you've got more money, you can really turn the tables on the past. Top government officials get rich on the profits of Uhuru. Then, for their black babies, they hire white nursemaids.
No, dear, you mustn't spit the seeds. Use your hands. Yes. With a long white beard. Don't hurt him. Oh, Willie. Why? Pretty white darling.
Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu. Kenya tunayoipenda. Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye bara.
Our mothers call their home the reserve. The reserve. This arid place, barren, unless like them you know how to look and where. A place of rocks and fine white sand, soil stained and pretending at fecundity. When it rains, the ground swells with liquid as though it is surprised, jostling for space, overwhelmed, gasping. Specks of young green flutter but never quite flourish. We watch foliage tear in the wind, lifting only to encounter shards of sand ever on the rise. The lands they were born on, the trees they climbed as children, the ponds they teased their reflections in, the fish, the fowl, the fungi growing against thorny bark. The reserve is a place locked in its own conception of time. The date is 8th February 1933. In the case of East Africa, there can be no doubt that the introduction of European rule as distinct from European settlement has been of great benefit to the native people. It would be difficult to find any other instance of a white population settling in a native country with so little disturbance of the original population. The history of property is the history of white people owning property. That is where the paper is. She looks at me, she says, "It's because you have no history." I think she is mistaken. It is because I have no land.
Where Kenya's richest farms lie, here settlers transform the rough African bush into a little piece of England. The fox doesn't exist in Africa, but you can have a chunk of frozen fox flown in, tie it to the end of a string, and have it dragged around by a black houseboy. Together, they make a fine scent for the hounds. The British wanted so much to fox hunt in Kenya that they even taught the natives to play the fox's part. But the fox is a wily prey, one which the hunter should never underestimate.
Alipandisha bendera jamhuri. Mzee wetu alituomba tusahau yaliyopita, badala yake tuijenge nchi yetu.
December 16th, 1964, general amnesty for all Mau Mau. Because their war against the British won Kenya's freedom, because they killed 85 whites and about 5,000 blacks, Kenyatta proclaims them national heroes. Kenyatta promises them their country's eternal gratitude in the land of the whites they killed. Few real Mau Mau remain, but the offer is too appealing. 1,400 heroes reach for their rewards. The whites' land trembles under their feet. Thousands prepare to leave. Real estate agency windows are papered with offers. If you don't catch the irony, the terms of sale seem absurd. 99 years to pay. The irony is deliberately funereal, bitter, and pathetic.
To whom are staying on, Mr. G. Georges announces with great sorrow that his once prosperous farm has been put up for sale. All friends are kindly requested to dig out all flowers and ornamental plants from the gardens before the sale.
This grief is sealed in memories I have forgotten. in lives that were not mine, that if I had lived, I would not have survived. I count them out like pennies in my palm. 1 for a name I will never be called by, 2 for a language I cannot speak, 3 for land I do not know how to till. They will call me barren, and it will not be untrue. Tassa, barren, of all living female creatures. Also the word for metal basin used for washing hands, before and after a meal. Manifest destiny. This word is many other words as well. Settler, frontier, outback, territory, genocide. An intentional act to destroy a people in whole or in part. Genocide, a new word for an action as old as time. The reserve is a myth before it is a real place. Our mothers are the phantom creatures who inhabit it, tilling, tending, never quite belonging. The perpetual threat of eviction looming. The reserve is the first place we learn to deny ourselves. It is here that we come to be unseen, unspoken. Our mothers live a life on the reserve, looking out at a horizon that is firm and immovable, as though it were set in stone.
We have the pleasure of being here today to speak about a new film by Renée Mboya. The title of the film that you've just seen is A Glossary of Words My Mother Never Taught Me. And I have had the extraordinary privilege of being in dialogue with Renée around the development of this work over the last 2 years in the context of Forecast. Today, we're happy to welcome Luke Melchiorre to join us. Luke, we're so happy to have someone throw some fresh responses and insights at this work and to have you here in dialogue with us today. And given the fact that we don't have a huge amount of time, I'm just going to hand right over to you, Luke, and ask you to go ahead with your first question for Renée.
Thank you so much, Candice, and congratulations, Renée, on a wonderful piece of work. And of course, I'm very grateful to the Forecast Festival to give us an opportunity to talk about that work in a public forum. I wanted to start with my first question, which addresses the beginning of the film, Renée. You have these beautiful images at the start of the film of fireworks and throngs of people celebrating. And then, of course, later we have the image of Jomo Kenyatta, the father of Kenyan independence, speaking charismatically to a group of people that surround him on all sides. And yet almost immediately, your narration makes us question some of these images. You speak with a close-up of Kenyatta, of a father abandoning his children, failing them, raising them to, as you put it, be afraid all the time and teaching them silence. Your film, at least to me, seems to be interested in how structures of authority are transposed from the family to the nation. Can you talk a little bit about why you opened the film with this sequence? Why is Kenyatta such a central presence in your film? And then finally, what is your film telling us about the relationship between Uhuru, the birth of these new African nations, and the figure of the father?
I don't think that the film was in any way meant to be a reflection, like a holistic reflection on the idea or the moment of Uhuru and or Kenyatta specifically. I was really
in many ways trying to reflect on my own childhood and growing up in Kenya at the time of the Moi dictatorship, where this kind of language was very much taken for granted. So the idea of the president of the nation as the father, the idea of the nation itself, the land, the territory as something that embodied as a kind of paternal or maternal presence. Like we very much thought about family and country, or family and country overlapped in the ways in which we spoke about ourselves and about the civic and political space that we inhabited. So I hadn't really encountered Kenyatta in all that much of my research. When I was first thinking about what this film could be, I was very much thinking about the coup, the attempted coup that happened in 1982, which I think is really, in some ways, the beginning of the Nyayo era and cemented like a very specific type of leadership, which is what I then came to experience growing up in the 80s and 90s. So it hadn't occurred to me at all to think and to look at Kenyatta. It's really only through looking at the footage from Africa Blood and Guts that I started to think about what that independence moment might have been, and speaking to the elders, speaking to people that I thought might have been alive or around or aware at the time of independence, but who were in my immediate circle, being like my parents and people of their generation. I kept asking, like, what do you remember about this time? And the thing that struck me was very much the ways that they had learned to think about Kenya, having been born into a place that wasn't necessarily Kenya, or wasn't Kenya for them. I think for the British Empire and for the colonial regime, Kenya was a place that existed administratively and territorially, but for the people that were living there, I don't think that any of them necessarily thought of the place where they were as Kenya. My family is from Trans Nzoia, and this was, the northeastern extreme of the White Highlands. And so looking at Kenyatta and thinking about the idea of the father really overlapped with me thinking about the place that I'm from and the people that are around me I'm from, and the kind of language that they had adopted in order to speak about the place that they're from. I think this figure of the father of the nation and the ways in which that language evolves as regimes themselves evolve, as Kenyatta's regime evolved, as Moi's regime evolved, as, you see Mobutu Sese Seko calling himself the Messiah, the guide, the leopard. And by the time we're coming to the late 1990s and his regime is coming to an end, people have a very different articulation of what that means, or what that kind of leadership has come to embody. So yeah, I was trying to think about like many different things, and Kenyatta became sort of like a figurehead for my imagination around what Kenya could be, or what a genesis for the idea of the nation of Kenya might have been.
Yeah, I'm very struck by the presence of the authority of paternal figures in these kind of multiple ways that you and Luke have already hinted at in the work. But of course, the father is not the only sort of lurking parental figure. We've already mentioned that the work is titled A Glossary of the Words My Mother Never Taught Me. And in that sense, it points to the way that we're constituting language. We become who we are through language. Often via a so-called mother tongue. Luke has already pointed out that the film asks us really to think about the relationship between biological family and other sort of parental structures or authorities within our lives. And maybe you could speak a little bit about the way that this happens through language as this means by which we find ourselves, but also language as this kind of messy quality which can't always be trusted. Language is something which sometimes fails us, and you hint at this, you mentioned the words that you were never taught by your mother. So I would say that through your lens, or through the lens of this piece, language is not an innocent quantity. Could you speak a little bit about the title of the work and this role that the glossary plays as a kind of structuring device for the piece?
I mean, I think both of you are bilingual, multilingual, and potentially understand there is a certain degree of complexity around the languages that we speak, and when you speak more than one, then it creates, I think, strange conceptual overlaps because you receive different messages from different languages. And in Kenya in particular, of course, we have our national languages are English and Swahili. Swahili is our national language and English is our official language. And there is something of a tension because for, I think, a majority of the nation, Swahili is not their native language or necessarily even close to their native language. Swahili is, East African coastal language. So a lot of us come to this language. It is, I think, a mother tongue, but it is truncated. It is politicized. It exists it's sort of like the political arena as a language that has been instrumentalized in many ways. And I think of English very much in the same way, because the way that I learned English and the way that I was disciplined in my learning of English and how I speak and how I present myself in English, I thought was an extension of a specific type of colonial education and an extension in essence of a colonial regime. Many people might not agree. This was a feeling that I had when I started to think about the place of language, the place of movement, the place of location, and how these things overlap and how these things complicate each other necessarily. So I was attempting to resolve something for sure. I think Toni Morrison speaks about that language, oppressive language, does more than represent violence. In its own way, it is violence, and it more than represents the limits of knowledge. It limits knowledge. So I was trying to, I think, break out of the limitations that I felt existed in my own languages, and think about a way to overlap the languages that, the words that I do feel confident about, and the languages, or like the elements of the language that I within which I feel I am most myself, as a way to sound like myself, or to think about myself as a whole being.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions on the screen. Welcome, Renée, to this forum, and thank you so much for taking questions from the audience. I guess one of the questions I have for you is, where do you get your material from?
For this film specifically, all of the material is sourced from archival footage, and specifically the film Africa, Blood and Guts, which I first found on YouTube a couple years ago. And I was interested in using material that is already in the public domain, that is being circulated and thought about anew, simply because I feel like online spaces have opened up access to archives that previously would not have been accessible. So Africa, Blood and Guts specifically, I first was watching and thinking about alongside with YouTube commenters and other people that were seeing it online for the first time in the late 2000s or in recent years, as opposed to when it first came out in the 1960s, which I thought was an important distinction, because in that itself there is a generation gap in how people are experiencing this film, and the intended audiences, I suppose, have changed now.
Is there also a gender difference in how they perceive it?
I think the kinds of people that seek out this type of film are mostly male, and I think the film also embodies or glorifies a certain kind of militarized masculinity, which I suppose was common in the 60s and specifically in speaking about Africa as a war-torn place, as a place of conflict. And so, yeah, I think as far as I can tell, most of the people, and the person that I first learned it from, were men. And one of the things that I was seeking out in attempting to recut this film is to just find the women that looked like me, that existed in 1966, that were involved in the political upheavals that were happening in Africa at the time. I didn't think that they were particularly visible in this archive that is dense. You know, there's a lot of material, it's a 2-hour film, and yet there's very few women actually in it.
And why this conversation between your grandmother, between your mother, between yourself? I mean, this sort of generational mother-to-daughter conversation.
Yeah. A lot of my work concerns spaces of knowledge or forms of knowledge that are unacknowledged in some respects. And I was really trying to think about ways to create a heritage or recall a heritage of citing Black women, who I think quite often fall out of citation and a lot of the time are the first to be forgotten when intellectual references are made. And so for me, it was important to acknowledge the spaces where I learned the things that I know, and the spaces alongside, or the people alongside whom I have learned to think. And these conversations for me were always happening first in the domestic space, first in the kitchen, in the garden, with my mothers and my aunties and all of the women who surrounded me. And so, yeah, I think it was important for me to acknowledge that.
We have a question from Simone that she asks, some of the images you're showing are hard to watch, like the fox hunt. What are your thoughts on perpetuating them by incorporating them into your work?
It was a difficult decision, the fox hunt especially. I think we agree that that is quite a difficult scene to watch. It was important for me to, a lot of the time when people of color and Black people specifically speak about the violence that is perpetuated against them by white supremacist institutions and institutions of that perpetuate systemic racism, they are just not believed. And this was a scene that for me really cemented the fact that it is possible to dehumanize somebody to the extent that, literally and figuratively, to the extent that it was thought of as normal to treat a young child like this. So yeah, it was a difficult choice, and I also have trouble watching that scene, but I thought that it was important in fermenting the argument that this was a problematic period, and the way that it's portrayed as idyllic or a time of glory inside of the discourse of Kenyan colonialism, I think is just bizarre.
We have a question from Bambi, and she asks, who is the film directed at?
The film was for me. I very much wanted to understand some things about my heritage and the place that I came from. I grew up in what would have been considered then to be the White Highlands. I grew up in a place that was in itself violent in different ways, and that reproduced through language and through the norms that were taught to me. A very specific type of colonial violence. So the film in many ways is a reconciliation between myself and the place that I come from, and an acceptance of that place. It's often said that people make objects in order to come to terms with grief and with guilt and with all these complicated feelings. And for me, this was the object with which I grieved my childhood and my place of birth.
We have a question from Andy, and she asks, do you think your theme is universal?
No. I think the theme is a theme that speaks to my specific experience of the world and my life on this earth, but I think that there is something to be learned in speaking about other people's lives and walking in other people's shoes, which is one of the things that I really thought was important for me to do in putting my voice into this film and putting my body in the way of this quite violent material. I was trying to find ways to intervene in these themes as a way to universalize them in some way. So I think if it's relatable, then that's great, and if it's not, then I don't feel any burden to extend that relatability any further.
The final question I'm going to ask you is from Frank, and he asks, or he says, there are examples of contemporary image production that you would say, are there examples of contemporary image production that you would say represent your experience as a Kenyan better, or is there still a vacuum?
I think that there are examples of contemporary image production. Kenya is a complicated place. Kenyan identity in itself is complicated. And so it is a difficult place to generalize in that respect, but there is a huge film and image production industry beyond popular culture, beyond music and religious programming. We also have a huge film industry that happens in vernacular languages, in indigenous languages, that I think is quite important, that is very rarely acknowledged, and that I don't necessarily have access to myself because a lot of these languages I don't speak. And so, yes, I think for whom it is most important, that there is access and there are replacements for a lot of these violent images inside of contemporary Kenyan culture, and for that I'm very happy.
Thank you so much, Renée, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Immortality is the subject of the Forever Show by science journalist Caty Enders. Close your eyes and listen to the trailer for this podcast series, which will be followed by one of the episodes.
It is a great joy to speak forth words of eternal life, in that the deepest desire of every human person is to experience everlasting life. There is no desire above that desire in a human person.
So we're at Harvard Medical School.
All humans want to live continuously, forever and ever.
And we are at a center where we study aging.
They want to live perpetually, no ending to the life they live on the face of this earth.
Just walking down the hall towards my lab, there's the door to go in there. Above the door, it says operations room as a nod to Winston Churchill. We're not battling the Nazis, we're battling disease and aging.
What we do, which I like to call the rejuvenation industry because it's all about damage repair, has only come into existence in the past 5 years.
This is your door. This is the door into everlasting life.
Do you get to go in?
Well, yeah, follow me. Here we go. I won't make you put on a lab coat, just don't touch anything.
We're going to move from this mortal into that immortality, and in that immortality we shall live forever and ever and ever and ever. And all the people said, let it be.
Well, I started with the cryonics. We needed to be able to cryopreserve people the best way we could, and therefore I went to mortuary school.
Man begins tremendous and sometimes original endeavors to build and to make something on the face of this earth, and then he cannot complete that which he has started because of the cessation of time that he has on this earth.
And what we've discovered is that you can actually reset the hard drive of an animal, and there's a backup copy of youthfulness in the body. Can we reverse Alzheimer's? Can we bring back lost memories?
All the great philosophers dreamed of something, they couldn't put their finger on it. You and I have it. It's ours forever. Aren't you glad for it right now?
Aubrey was a biblical prophet, okay? People who are best to push us now yeah, the profit is actually going to lead to our success.
His scientific legitimacy is kind of, questionable in the science circle. He's a cult figure as a transhumanist, but he's not a conventional scientist. He's a true believer.
I do drink more than most people would, but I don't seem to.
It smells like delicious whiskey, I have to say.
But I get away with it, that's right. So
I want to get into it, don't you? A harvest of immortality, a harvest of everlasting life.
Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch.
Everybody, welcome to my annual conversation with my dear friend Ray Kurzweil. Ray,
hi.
A pleasure.
Great to be here.
We're together every year at this time to talk about what we're both excited about, what's going on in the world of exponential technologies. First off, Ray, I got to say those are beautiful suspenders.
Yeah.
Hand painted, I gather, huh?
They are. Yeah, I wear them every day. So.
Yeah. Well, we're up here in Palo Alto, right next to your home at Google. I wonder if an important part of intelligence and future AIs are emotions, or that to have reinforced emotions of happiness and anger and fear and love and those sorts of things.
It's a philosophical question. It's not a scientific question. It's not. Well, some people believe it's scientific, that you can actually test something, is it conscious or not? But there's really no way that you can test something to see if it's conscious.
Do you believe that these neural nets, these artificial personas, will develop consciousness? Let's talk about that, and let's talk about the AI as the destroyer, as the negative, the dystopian version versus, I think you and I err on the positive side. And how do you answer if someone says, "My God, it's going to be, will destroy the world"?
I mean, the idea of a future computer is very often negative. We've seen that in every futurist movie. Mm-hmm. Usually some band of humans go up against the AI. The AI is like one thing that's, and they have a struggle. The human being somehow manages to win, and that's the end of the movie. What you and I have seen, we both documented how technology progress is making everything better in terms of human well-being.
Because our current economic models don't measure anything accurately. They don't measure the fact that a kid in Tanzania with a smartphone has millions of dollars of computational capability in their hands. It's crazy.
And the barriers between being well off and not being well off we're overcoming them all over the world, because people in Tanzania have smartphones, and we're creating a much better world in every single measure of human well-being.
Close your eyes. I'm keeping watch.
Close your eyes. I'm keeping watch.
Close your eyes.
Honey, did you just trip over the dog?
No. Maybe. Cherry Home uses advanced computer vision and AI to see and interpret the events happening at home. It gives you peace of mind, an ability to know what matters most when it matters most. Experience a new level of safety.
I got approached by a guy who sold his company to Apple, and he was just talking about what computer vision can achieve in the nearest future. And he said, if I were you, I would look into recognizing what people do on video and trying to make sense of that. That's going to be huge soon. And I was like, what if I started such a company? Would you invest? And that's how we started Cherry.
Our sensors use computer vision to recognize people, learn their behavior patterns, then monitor their movement and activities in a discreet, respectful way, much like a human caregiver. It takes at least several days for the system to start learning your loved one's normal daily routines. Once the system knows their healthy behavior and daily patterns of movement, we can easily spot unusual behavior, a decline in health, a serious safety issue, or a medical emergency.
And we coined the idea that we need to help people take care of other people using this technology. And basically there are only like two viable options, like taking care of kids or taking care of seniors. People don't want to put cameras in their bedrooms or bathrooms. They don't want to, get undressed in front of cameras. They don't even want cameras just, to film their everyday life.
You are not alone.
But cameras are super helpful. And there's also some, privacy filter, which allows you to, from one side, see a person, like what the person does, understand, like if the person is lying on the floor or the person is sitting at the table, but at the same time would prevent anybody from seeing any details of that person, like are they dressed or naked.
There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch.
What we're making is artificial intelligence and is still sounds and looks creepy to people when, like they're watched by AI. So we don't have to make the machine understand what is abnormal. We need to make the machine train itself every day, every hour of what is normal. So it can start predicting what people's gonna do based on its previous experience.
When our sensors detect unusual behavior, you get an alert on your phone. Our sensors keep watch over your loved one to help them stay safe and well when you can't be there.
Ray, you and I are very passionate about longevity. It's a field where we both study and track what's going on in senolytic medicines and Wnt pathway and stem cells. Anything in particular that you're of late tracking?
Yes, I mean, what has just happened now is we have the ability to apply AI to biotechnology.
Yeah. I'm one of my friends, a guy named Alex Zivrankov, he's the CEO of In Silico Medicine. They've been using adversarial networks to create new medicines in silico, and then actually building the molecules and testing them and getting a tremendous result. So it's we talk about heading towards longevity escape velocity. I mean, this is some of the techniques that we're going to see.
So I'm the founder and CEO of In Silico Medicine. That's my primary affiliation, and that's my life. I don't have a family, don't have a girlfriend. I just have my two companies. Something that kind of disturbs me a lot is that we grow, mature, peak, and then we continuously decline and eventually die. Whatever you do, regardless of how much money you make, it really doesn't matter. You are going to decline and die. And that is a very uncomfortable thought, but I think that just like with alcoholism, the recognition of a problem is the first step to the solution. And eventually what we need to figure out is how to track, repair, and improve. And the sooner we start going massive and iPhone level penetration, the sooner we're going to see progress in the field.
When scientists say that such and such a thing has a respectable probability of actually happening in a certain amount of time, then it's going to be believed, as long as it's the perceived consensus of the scientific expert community in the relevant field.
Listen, if we're going to find out how we reverse aging, my guess is at some time in the next 20 years, which means don't die from something stupid in the interim.
So I view myself as a technologist. Technologists are basically constantly engage in leaps of faith. So, putting 2 and 2 together and making 17. Scientists avoid doing that like the plague. And it has different results, of course. But yes, you asked about Demandis and Kurzweil and such like. So they've also been great friends of mine since the dawn of time. And so Peter was actually our first business advisor. So we've been talking with him and the X Prize Foundation about doing a longevity prize for a long time, and it's actually very close to actually happening now. We watch this space, as they say.
We never watch your loved one. We just help you watch out for them from everywhere.
I had a personal experience with my great-grandmother. When I was 14, she had dementia. She would, have different personas living in her brain. Sometimes she would say, "Hey, stop keeping me hostage. I want to leave. I want to go home." And she would try to leave. So this is really, really hard. And it's very hard for a family member who has become the primary caregiver, because once you become a caregiver, you're no longer a relative. It changes the relationship forever. Mostly it was like my dad pointing his finger at me and saying, "He looks like he got nothing to do. He's been playing computer games for the last 2 hours." I didn't do much of the stuff which like my mom did, like helping her with, bathing and toilets or, like any other thing. So basically for me, it was just keeping an eye on her. So I could be easily replaced with Cherry, because I was not, if I was a paid caregiver, that would be a waste of money, because I was literally just in a next room playing video games. I haven't thought about it much. I'm more, geeky. Human relationships are sometimes a mystery to me. I like machine-to-machine relations. They're, very straightforward. When she was that old with dementia, she mostly spent her time either watching TV or just, blankly staring at a wall, thinking something. I guess she had pictures in her mind. When she was younger, she was great. She was super smart, very responsible. She was managing the whole family. Like during the revolution, she got thrown out of her house, basically in the middle of winter, with nothing, with no money, with no winter clothes, with 2 little kids. And she figured it all out. She made, a good living. She moved to Moscow. She was a great person. I am a big believer that AI is going to change the way people live from a lot of aspects. And one of the most important aspects is going to be healthcare. Because at some point in time, a doctor on his or her dashboard would see just a notification that, hey, looks like this person might have a stroke in 2-3 years. So I do hope that my daughter is going to live to 150 years or more, and she's going to keep her mind sharp during all of this time. Other applications which I don't want to do, which I don't want to make available for people, some states are trying to build scores for every person based on what they do. And weaponizing AI is a very, very bad thing. So I want to make sure that any technology which I work with only stays for as a tool for people to make their life better. Basically, by refusing to take investments from anybody affiliated with some sorts of government, by refusing to work with any sorts of this. I'm a libertarian, so I think there's not much good in governments.
We're sorry. All surgeons are busy now. Will you please try your call again later?
Well, shit.
He's a physician at Massachusetts General Hospital. Good to see you again, Doctor. Wanted to start with what we heard from Rick Bright, the senior advisor at the National Institutes of Health. One thing he said was the window is closing to address this pandemic because we still do not have a standardized, centralized, coordinated plan to take this nation through the response. This is the United States. I mean, that's extraordinary that has not happened from the beginning, let alone is the case now.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of us are just sort of in this kind of state of stunned disbelief at how we've seen this play out, because we have had so much faith in our government for so long, and we've just seen this total failure of leadership and planning and preparation, and also a failure to really pull together in the midst of a crisis and find some solidarity and find some solutions. Instead, it seems like things have broken down along sort of familiar political fracture lines, which is so dispiriting to see. It's really frightening, to be honest.
Hi.
Are you okay?
No, not really.
Oh, what are you feeling? It's okay. I know how to handle a crush in the emergency room.
You can't take all the precautions. You don't have proper masks or PPE.
I have the basics of what is most important to keep me safe. We still have that. And I also have my own in my lunchbox. So, like, if I'm on shift and they run out, I've got a backup.
Your lunchbox?
Yeah, the Tupperware.
I don't like this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but I'm okay. I've got a backup plan. It's the lunchbox.
It's not a lunchbox. It's a Tupperware container. It's not even a lunchbox.
Maybe you should get me a real lunchbox that I can keep my own personal protective equipment in. I like brontosauruses. Did you know that I almost got a tattoo of a brontosaurus?
What is happening? You're high on the danger.
I'm probably a little underslept, and it's manifested in a sort of giddy way.
I'm not okay with any of this.
And I had a vision that you and I would be okay, and I was worried about you.
I don't think we can put on the radio that you're comforted by a vision.
I think lack of vision is what got us into this pickle.
I feel like your Texas accent is coming out very slowly.
Well, could be. Yeah. It's gonna be all right. Ain't nothing to worry about. Gonna take real good care of you. We have the hospital has granted permission to clinicians at the bedside to allow patients to record their last thoughts before they are intubated to share with their loved ones. And the way that we can do that is just by obtaining explicit permission from the patients to record any messages on voice or video with our own cell phone or other personal device to share with their family. In bad days in the emergency department, being able to momentarily set aside the fact that the patient who's critically ill in front of you is, or could be, a mother or a father or a son or a daughter or any of those things, like that helps you do just the basic life-saving elements of your job. But if you do that all the time, then you lose any ability to have a human interaction with your patients. And that's really important too. Like, you can still do the job of emergency medicine like a robot could do it. Like, you don't, emotional contact or care or reassurance is not sort of part of the bare minimum of what needs to happen in the department for people to get the actual medical care that they need. But it makes you feel like a doctor instead of just an automaton. It's like the man with the oranges. We were doing everything medically for him, for his gangrenous leg and his sepsis and everything else, but nobody got him any oranges. He was just asking if he could have some oranges.
Why did that case stay with you?
It's such a human thing to request when you are on your deathbed and just critically ill with all of your organs failing, like just like a slice of orange. And also what a wonderful thing that is bright and sweet. His asking for a slice of orange I sort of just wrote off as delirium. And then I signed out the board and I left the hospital, and then it sort of just fell on me like a ton of bricks.
I see the technology opportunities, and this may not make me very popular with a lot of my technology and engineering friends. We have to be careful because technology does not help us do what we do better. Technology profoundly changes what we do. Technology is changing our I'll use your word, the sociology of how we relate to other people. This Skype conversation is great. It's not as rich as if you were in my office where I could offer you a cup of coffee. It is not going to be the same to see my mother at a distance via Skype versus being there and having a meal with her. And so we have to be careful that technology does not change what a human is. And I worry about, particularly in aging, we are going to be asking people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s to live a lifestyle that no 25-year-old would live. I can make you a house that's going to monitor, manage, and motivate everything you do, from what you eat, to go to the bathroom, to remind you to take your meds, to make sure that you're walking correctly. And I'm going to put it all into the cloud, into a database, to have a doctor, nutritionist, or care provider make sure you're okay. And by the way, your daughter's going to peek in to make sure that you ate and drank correctly to that. No one else would ever accept that lifestyle. But then many companies are out there and universities are out there saying, this is going to be the cure to our aging society. Well, it may keep you safe, but it may not keep your dignity.
I'm going to take real good care of you. It's going to be all right. I'm going to take real good care of you.
Max, hello.
Hello, Caty. So sorry, I waited you in my room and then I read your mail.
Totally okay. How are you?
Oh, good. We didn't talk about a year, and we've got a lot of changes in our company, and even changed our focus. We are applying the same tech. We developed a lot of really significant tech for our Cherry Home project, and it's like kind of engine allows the system to understand like who is doing what and where and for how long. We used it before to understand what seniors do at home, and right now we apply the same tech to industrial environment, and we understanding what people do and production lines and construction plants and stuff like that, and it helps management to react on this faster to help the team be more efficient, and in the end it helps to be more efficient, to produce more revenue, more goods. Based on our experience with Fortune 500 companies, we have right now contracts with 2 of them.
Can you tell me who they are?
I can't say that. The problem of working with that big organizations that we sometimes can't disclose it. I think that this technology we're working, we could say that it's like understanding human behavior in context is huge. You see that some of our home assistants like Alexa or Google Home or something, they became devices with cameras now, and they can understand what you're doing. I think that in the next maybe 10 years, when you will enter your home and your home or your computer will be recognize what you're doing, it will be normal. Or you will do something on the factory, and if you will not follow the protocol, the factory environment should react on you and will say like, hey, you're doing something wrong, please stop.
You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone.
More of us will be like, will work for robots, like service them, train them, help them to be more accurate, help them to not harm others, stop them when, it's dangerous and stuff like that.
And it seems like potentially if we're taking a sort of data approach, we will become more efficient in the way that robots are more efficient.
Yeah. I think that, this layer between automated machines and humans will be thinner and thinner. And that's why we believe that technology we produce in Cherry will help the world become better, become safer, and become more efficient.
Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home. There is nothing to fear. I'm keeping watch. Welcome home.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings about this year that we've had, because I think for a long time people viewed screens as hedonic escapes. They were kind of ways of escaping the world, and we've been forced for the last year to use them for utilities, for things like work, and for kids in particular for school. And I don't know a single child who's enjoyed using screens for school. They all do it reluctantly. It's impossible. My kids are 3 and 5, and it's been impossible for them when they've been remote. And so I think one kind of silver lining in all of this is that it's possible that because we've been forced to use screens for a year, we're going to be moving away from them when the year is up. And so the things we used to see as the utilities, the apps that we used to see as escapes from the world, we might think of the real world as the escape because we haven't been able to escape to it for so long. So I'm slightly optimistic that our sentiment towards screens will have shifted over the year. And of course, we're still going to find it hard to resist the charms of all the things that we keep using, like social media and email and all of that. But I'm hopeful that especially for younger people, they'll say, you know what, I haven't been able to see my friends in person in a kind of very free, open way for a long time. And so that's what they're going to be craving, instead of saying, I can't wait to get on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever. So we'll see.
Well, that's encouraging. I've been interested in this idea that a lot of sort of our relationship to our screens is not something that we opt in for or opt into. It seems like regardless of how we personally feel about technology, what we know about behavioral psych has made it possible to sort of capitalize on human weakness to a point where even if we know that we would rather sort of be out with our friends, there's this sort of planned stickiness in these technologies that makes it really hard to choose. And I was wondering if you thought that sort of tech companies would be more interested in introducing stopping cues as a part of technology because everybody's on their screens all the time now and they have a sensitivity to the negative effects of that, or if you think that that's not going to change. No, that's not going to change. I just read an article this morning that a number of the social media apps, in particular, I think Facebook and Instagram, are in the process of creating a version for kids. So no, instead of moving further away, they're leaning into this idea of widening the net and increasing the audience. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the idea that you can rely on the ethics of large companies to make the right decisions is just it's faulty. It doesn't work that way. Their primary drive as for-profit companies is to make as much money as possible, and so unless they are forced by either from the top down by laws or from the bottom up by consumer pressure, there's just no way they're going to do the right thing. I'm pretty pessimistic about that, unfortunately. But I don't know. There has been a rise in the last few years in at least grassroots pressure. So I think a lot of consumers, end users, are becoming much savvier about the use of screens. So, when I first started speaking about this issue about 7 or 8 years ago, I would have to spend, the first 20 minutes of any talk convincing people that this was an issue. Like we should be concerned about screens. And especially, 2013, 14, a lot of people pushed back and said, well, I just think these are amazing products. That's why we use them so much. And even publishers early on, when I tried to write the book, some of them had said things like, well, it's kind of a storm in a teacup. Tech is wonderful. I don't think we need to really talk about this, which is absurd.
now in 2021. We've come a long way from that. So grassroots pressure has risen. And then, even governments in Western Europe, Northern Europe, East Asia, less in the United States, to some extent in Australia, they're starting to think about what kinds of legislative interventions they should introduce. So between the pressure from above and the pressure from below, I think some tech companies are going to have to start behaving differently, but we can't rely on them to do the right thing ethically, I don't think.
Yeah. Your anecdote about Freud and his sort of blind spot to his own cocaine addiction was really interesting, and also had me thinking about the extent to which sort of Freudian psychology influenced the way in which marketing and tech developed in its relationship to our own weaknesses. I was wondering if you thought there was ever going to be a way in which we could use psychology to protect ourselves for our own weaknesses, or if the sort of engine of capitalism is too powerful in regards to using what we know about human psychology to exploit those weaknesses.
Yeah, I think across the population, it's a lot to expect people to be able to en masse undo or backward engineer their engagement with screens, and to say, as a population, we may be using our screens 5 hours a day right now, but I think we can all roll back to say an hour or 2 hours a day. I'm not optimistic about that, and I think that's because there's a colossal mismatch between what each of us as individuals brings to the screen and what's going on behind the screen. The hundreds or thousands of people who have done everything they can through multiple rounds of testing, and which version of this product is stickier, and which psychological theories can I fold in and hooks can I fold in to make the product as hard to resist as possible. I think it's going to be hard for us to really fully undo the effects of all of that. But I think what we can do as individuals is we can certainly use some behavioral psychological principles to create maybe barriers between the times of the day when we're using screens and the times when we're not, or to cultivating habits that I think are much healthier. So simple things like, I think the best habits are often analog. So we have a little box on our kitchen counter next to our dining room table. And so it's my wife and I, and we have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 5-year-old and the 3-year-old my son and my daughter don't use screens, but they see us with our phones sometimes, unfortunately. And when we have dinner, we pop our phones very conspicuously in the box, and they stay there. And so, and I've been doing that even from before the time I had kids. So this has been for a number of years now, demarcating life with screens from life without screens. That's very important, I think. And my rule is, no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I am, no matter whom I'm with, I will not have a screen at a meal. And so that's the kind of thing we can do. And it's not high-tech psychology. You don't need to be a genius, but the idea is you cultivate the habit, and eventually you actually start to look forward to it during the day. And so for me, it's incredibly therapeutic to have that.
It seems like it's going to get harder with, you go to a restaurant now and you have to scan the menu because menus are not provided because of COVID. It's totally sensible, but at the same time, it just seems like potentially COVID has been this sort of accelerator for interesting screen-based interventions for otherwise human-mediated interactions.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I
mean, I think so. What screens do is they create social and psychological distance. So they come between you and another person. That's one of the biggest problems with screens historically, was that they damaged relationships, they degraded connections strangers drew between each other. They distanced you from people that you shouldn't be distancing yourself from. But in an age where we're dealing with a pandemic, social distance, not social distance as much as physical distance, but physical distance is very important. So screens as utilities have a really important role to play there. If you don't want to have a server coming right up close to a person eating in a restaurant, but you still want to be able to thrive as a business, screens are wonderful. So I would very happily take my phone out of my pocket briefly or out of my bag, take the photo, send the text or whatever I need to do, and then put it back in my bag. I think these very hard and fast rules that are completely inflexible are very difficult to sustain across time, especially when you have this kind of, really unusual tail event like a pandemic that's a sort of hopefully a once in a lifetime event for us. You want to maybe relax the rules where it makes sense to do that. And so I think in that case makes total sense. I wouldn't want to say we should never use screens ever, but in general, I think this rule of having screens come between us as social creatures is obviously a problem, but it's not a problem when what we're trying to do is keep ourselves apart.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of the people I've met who are developing these sort of frictionless technologies really don't like human interaction particularly. I've met a lot of people who have, particularly in regards to this one story that I've been working on in using sort of video monitoring and sort of body movement analysis as a replacement for in-home care. Like you have this this argument that it takes a lot of weight off the family because they don't have to spend time caring for another person who's very sick or sort of having, dealing with neurodegenerative disease that is really painful to watch. So the argument here is that, we can sort of remove some of the things that are uncomfortable about human interaction. This is a big term at the MIT Media Lab, frictionless technology. And I was wondering what you thought about that psychologically, since you specifically wrote about how like on-screen or social media interaction is poor human interaction.
I think, for me, the best thing about technology and where we approach utopia with respect to technology is when it's used as a utility, where it makes a task that is difficult much easier or allows us to achieve something that we can't achieve without technology. But social interaction for most of us is something we can achieve face-to-face much of the time. And so they're injecting technology, making that frictionless, I think it's problematic. It sort of short circuits a very important part of what it is to be human, which is this need to connect. We know that people live longer, they are psychologically healthier, they are happier, they are less anxious, they're less likely to be depressed when they have physical contact with real other people. And that is diminished when you do it through a screen. So that's a problem. But if we're talking about specific cases, like maybe caring for someone with a neurodegenerative disease, in some respects is easier. It's easier for the patient, it's easier for the carer. In some respects, because you use a particular app or a screen, I'm not opposed to that. I think a lot of people sort of expect me and other people who are critics of tech to come out and say, we should roll back to the 1950s. We should do away with screens altogether. And I think that shows a complete lack of nuance, and I think it's foolish. So the real question for me in every single situation is, what are the benefits, what are the costs, and how do we maximize the benefits and minimize the costs?
Is radio going to be there in the future? Or I should say audio?
I think so. I think radio is an incredibly immortal medium. That how many times have people talked about the golden age of radio? There have been like 5 of them since just I've been in the business. And so there are these reoccurring golden ages of radio, and we're certainly in one now with podcasts. And I think the form is kind of irrelevant. I mean, I think just audio is an incredible way to tell stories. And I know the two of you know this, that it's about characters, and it's about intimacy, and it's about, as you were saying, right, that the idea of creating your own images in your head. The listener has to kind of do the work of creating the images and kind of putting yourself there. And there's something that happens when you do that makes it kind of like cements it in your memory and kind of makes it a more intimate and powerful experience, I believe. So I think the audio storytelling is always going to be around in some form or another. Right now it's having a boom. And I think that there are just some stories that can be told more powerfully without images, without words, in this way. It's unique, and it has its certain kind of superpowers. And I think, and Caty's story is using that form in a really exciting way.
Welcome, Caty, and thanks for joining us from Colorado.
Thanks, Sarah.
So we have a question from Daria. Do you have any insights into how has the science of immortality been affected or altered by the pandemic?
I think for a lot of the scientists working in this field, they feel a sort of increased motivation. They always have felt that their work is the most important work in the world. The sort of idea in the community is like, obviously death is the worst problem that we all face. I think for a lot of researchers who are working on diseases of aging and aging as a disease, they use the argument that COVID sort of disproportionately affects older people as an argument for why their work is so important, why their work should be better funded. I don't think the messaging around the importance of working in this space has changed at all. I think people have just been feeling somewhat bolstered by the statistics out of COVID-19.
Lewis asked us, how big is the life extension industry?
It's massive, but it depends on how you splice it. By any measure, it's growing. The technologists and scientists working in this field say that sort of the rejuvenation industry has only been around for the last 5 years, meaning that we've only been working scientifically on rolling back the clock for the last 5 years. But investment dollars have been flowing into this space like crazy. There's this phenomenon that a lot of people have probably heard about where a lot of sort of prominent billionaires are pumping their own money into trying to extend life, like Larry Ellison, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. They're all investing in this space for personal reasons. The folks who actually work in the space have lost count of how many biotech startups are working on treating aging as a disease. It's definitely over 100, but it constantly changes because there's so much investment and so much excitement from biotech entrepreneurs.
Isabel actually has a really interesting question. Why did you decide not to use any images for the stream?
Personally, I find audio to be a really compelling medium on its own. Audio works in a different part of the brain. When you're looking at a story, it's a completely different physical and mental experience. I like the way that audio on its own is transportive, and I think it really puts people in the story in the way that sometimes putting images doesn't. Sometimes it feels to me like putting images to a sound piece can actually set you at a remove as opposed to being immersive, which is what I was going for.
Our last question is actually an important one, and it comes from Lara. Is there a racial divide in the interest in life extension technologies?
Absolutely. It's part of the reason why I was attracted to working on this project. I find the space to be remarkably lacking in diversity, considering the fact that this tech is being rolled out in a way that will affect all of us. Sort of in the story you just heard, this is tech that starts sort of being developed on a vulnerable population and then will affect everybody. But the small circle of people who are working on these problems tend to be predominantly extremely white and male, and from a small number of countries. So I think that's a really important part of this conversation and an important reason why I think we need to shed light on what's going on in this area of science and technology.
Well, thank you very much, Caty.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Pleasure.
My dear, here I am, back to you. This letters exchange sounds a lot like those old love stories from fairy tales. Fairy tales always start with once upon a time. There's also always a fight, somebody competing, dragons and dark knights, evil queens, and the prince or the princess, the good ones, defeating the villain, usually armed with just their own courage. There is also, you gotta be brave. There is no space on fairy tales for weak people. How cruel. Usually, the ones who are ready to shit their pants in front of any form of risk are the jokers, the characters that make you laugh with their stupid jokes. But let's get back to the winner. Somebody's always to win to get what they want, and after that they are heroes, after that they will always celebrated by their people. There is also almost always a parade of "Welcome back home, our hero." Have you ever noticed that? Can you tell me what is this human obsession with being the first in the classroom? Can you tell me what is wrong with us? I was wondering if in a love relationship, but even in a one-night stand, there is a winner. And the winner is the one who jerked off first. Or maybe, and the winner is the triple backflip jerk who got 9 votes from all the members of our jury. Why is there a winner in everything? What is this mania? Who is the winner here, my love? Can we all be winners? Or maybe, fuck off. I don't wanna be your winner. Can't we share the stage? I would like to thank everyone for this Oscar. My mom first, my dad, my sister, my auntie Margaret, my dog, my cat, and my redfish. But also my daughter, my cousin, my doctor, my schoolmate who was punching me every day out there, but you fucking loser. You get just a silly thank you. The Oscar is mine. It is me the winner. And there is nothing fun in it for you. Let's imagine an experiment. Put 3 humans in a room with a beautiful, warm, freshly baked loaf of bread in the middle. That's the only meal you will have for days, folks. That's it, fellas. You can bet they will fight, and there's gonna be a winner. Probably the only one left alive. Actually, you know, this is not an experiment. It's reality. Or what about in a classroom? Hey, you little fuckers, said the teacher. Who answered first will get the best grade. This is sick, don't you think? Sitting in the back of the class, while all those motherfuckers in the first row are ready to suck every fucking drop of sweat from the teacher. Please, prof, let me suck your dick dry. Sorry about that. Sometimes I don't understand what's wrong with me. Why can't I just confirm? What the hell is this letter I'm writing to you? Why don't just drop your silly message on WhatsApp? What about space timing maybe next time? Yes, I'm a weirdo. Kiss you, Annie. Can't wait to read your answer.
Vroom, vroom, Difference. It's gotta be a way. 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 Different. Difference. It's gotta be a way. Difference. Gotta be a way. It's gotta be a way. Difference. Gotta be a way. It's gotta be a way. Difference. Gotta be a way. Difference. Difference. Different. Different. It's gotta be a way. Difference. Gotta be a way. Difference. Gotta be a way. It's gotta be a way. Difference.
My dear, yesterday I brought the dog to the park, of course on its ferret leash and in one of the sad designated prison-looking areas. One dog started pooping and promptly Kropotkin went next to him and started to lick his ass. Such a great dream job. But would a human have done the same, licking the ass of a fresh pooped friend? I mean, friend is probably not the right word, I would say. They don't even know each other. Me and the other human dog owner looked at each other with a creepy smile, without even exchanging a word. In our life, nothing is random. Do you know why my dog is called Kropotkin? Or do you even know who he is? Let me give a small insight. Kropotkin was a Russian anarchist, of course with a long aristocratic background. He wrote maybe my favorite book, Mutual Aid. Yes, Mutual Aid. He recognized how animals of every species help each other in order to survive. And we fucking human beasts forgotten about that. What brought us here? How could we have become such a disgusting and individualist animal? But listen carefully. Enjoy the full relaxation of outdoor living. Bask in the sun by your own private pool. Why be caught up in the rat race of city life when you can enjoy life in the sunny dunes way? Play tennis on emerald green lands. Drink fresh mountain water from oaken buckets. Breathe the unpolluted air of the high desert. Take your song quail shooting in the wide open spaces, and who knows, you can even bag a mountain lion. Get out in the sun and water your own private garden. Become an independent man. Forge a life of your own like the pioneers who molded the West. And you girls will really enjoy the fully equipped Sunny Dunes kitchen. Plenty of space for cooking for Junior or for that man of the house. Playing a round of golf on the regulation-sized Sunny Dunes 9-hole golf course. And you can putt your heart's content on the special practice putting green. So, stop driving yourself crazy in that miserable, crowded city. Move out today and start your life over with our Sunny Dunes house in the sun. Think about that. A small, simple example. A stupid commercial promoting and glorifying a life where everything is private. Where you own and own and own. But do you remember those old TV shows where people were laughing at somebody else's disgrace? Like stupid kids jumping from the top of the rooftop of a suburban villa into a swimming pool, but oh no dude, epic fail. They missed it for a few centimeters and smashed their lazy ass on the floor. And actually, the internet is still full of this shit. And actually, the internet is full of individualism. Think about all the trolls who just enjoy having fun of what we call loser. Animals always help themselves somehow, but have we forgotten that we are animals as well? How do they help themselves? Today, there is no right and there is no wrong. There is only popular. The human race deserves to be wiped out. We just care about being popular. And do you remember the army of the 12 monkeys? 5 billion people will die from a deadly virus in 1997. The survivors will abandon the surface of the planet. And once again, the animals will rule the world. Go back to when we were animals. Reposition ourselves as part of the ecosystem and not at the top of it. Fuck off supremacy. Is it domination so cool? I don't want to be the first, but the last. The first will be the last and the last will be the first, said the Son of God. But who fucking cares? I don't. Do you? Please, I want to walk on my 4 legs. Please, put me on a leash. Please, be my master. Please, be my master, my dear. Goodbye, my love.
It's gotta be a way. It's gotta be a way. Different be a way. Different be a way. It's gotta be a way. Different. It's gotta be a way. Different. It's gotta be a way. Different. Gotta be a way. The way. It's gotta be different. It's gotta be different.
single entity. A single body, all together. So many souls in one permeable body. Yours forever. It was Eugenio, Luca and Stefano, and Peter and Anton, and Flavia and Julia and Selina and Rose and Tessel, and Natasha and Mavi and Joao and Bruno and Eli and Jersey. It was the collective of collectives, and now it is.
The main part of collective work in any form, whether you are doing it remotely or in practice day to day, is that it's a kind of constant navigation of compromise, respect, trust, and patience as well. I think, yeah, our collective practice was founded in a different way, a kind of social experience of construction and eating together and building projects and spaces. But I can imagine, you know, it's not so different. Doing it through a screen, obviously perhaps not as desirable, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the kind of same human interactions, nuances, egos, etc. emerge and dissipate. So yeah, it sounds like it was a really rewarding process in spite of the situation.
Could you speak a little bit about one of your flagship projects, Granby 4, that's in actual space, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we've tried to create collectives and collective modes of working in different contexts, mainly across the UK, but also outside. And that we've had varied success in that. It's really difficult when you're navigating kind of power structures or imbalances in the group, and particularly when you don't directly address them, when perhaps like people are meeting or trying to work collectively, but coming in at very different levels. And I think that the project that you referenced in Liverpool, where we've been working for the past 7 years with the Community Land Trust, has been really extraordinary and really rewarding, because we came as a collective to kind of do architectural work, design work, and master planning exercises. And they had already also collectivized through the Land Trust and other various different initiatives about gardening and setting up a market. So there was a kind of mutual understanding and respect about collectivity, about access, about generosity in relation to space and design, and a respect for one another. So yeah, that's.
I'd like to ask a question of both Parasite 2.0 and Fran. Fran, you keep mentioning this word navigation. Do you have tips for navigating collectivity? How do you get through maybe bottlenecks or issues where things slow down or misunderstandings occur? Is it about patience, like you said, or are there other things that can move projects forward, or do you sometimes have to completely switch course? I'm just wondering about this process of navigation.
Well, for us, at least, we're a group of 16 people who have now been working together for a decade. And over that time, the group's kind of evolved through many different iterations of like structures, of ways of trying to come together and push projects forward, or like how we do internal management, or how we set up studio space, lots of different things that we're doing at the same time. And I think it works when it's founded on, on love and respect and the capacity to have empathy for one another. And that's not always possible, because obviously work is stressful and people are under pressure, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes from a kind of very actually quite autonomous situation where you're also balancing a responsibility for the collective interest. So yeah, I don't know. It's a constant piece of work, basically. It's just a constant process.
Parasite. Go ahead.
We are completely agree. In a sort of way, the situation work when all the people feel comfortable in some environment, and so it's a sort of we need to looking for the situation where people can feel comfortable, and usually it's outside the ordinary life, this kind of events or environment. So if you are in this situation, in this, you are really near to the people around you, and also you don't feel judged. No one judge you. No one make you a responsibility or pressure. But you are inside a group. You are not inside a group, but you are the group. You don't need to think that you are part of something, because you are already part of something without thinking about that. So in the condition are more important than the process itself. So if you ask to the people to do something, to be participate to something, is already wrong, because you don't feel free to do what you want to do in the system of environment you can create, or you want to create, or you experiment. In our case, with Nasty Temple, it's the general condition for us, I think.
I would love to follow up just a tick on the setting up of conditions. I mean, you had to really roll with this new pandemic situation without judgment and all of these things that you just said. How did you manage to do this over this past period? Get that very comfortable feeling going on for all of the participants in the project?
Yeah, I gotta say, like, that wasn't that easy. Also because was a pretty long process, you know. It was 2 years. Almost all the time, having this virtual exchange. And yeah, so somehow there was a moment when we thought that we lost, the energy and this momentum, there was between us. And also the situation was constantly changing, so at one point there was the option of having something just digital. After there was the option of having something between digital, a hybrid format. Right. So yeah, I mean, it was a pretty hard job. And at one point we also understood that maybe the best option was to, somehow let's say step back, and having more this role of asking them to produce some materials about the topic. We were somehow the subject we had, and after making this sort of editing of all these materials produced. This is what actually we're going to do at Forecast radialsystem.
Oh, super. I'd love to ask Jerzy a question. You and Franz Assemble have worked together on an exhibition in Hamburg. Could you describe that a bit? It's a planet.
Absolutely. Well, it wasn't directly with Fran. It was with Joe and Adam from Assemble. And I think it's kind of interesting to compare, let's say, the attempts with the project at the MKG in Hamburg, Life on Planet Ossimanirana, and Nasty Temple. Essentially, it's about creating a meeting place where it's possible both to imagine a new cosmology and a new cosmogony, like how to create a new world. So it's not, I mean, you can see the picture of the exhibition, of part of the exhibition of the radio room behind me. And I think the very important thing that we're all discussing is actually is to find new models, like how to create the space for new models of collectivity to happen inside. And I think that is important by, I think the classic way of being together is almost like a religious experience, and that's where we kind of lose ourself and are capable to be with the other because of the loss of the self, and this is this love, which I think is, you know, like we don't have to be shy to be hippies, you know, kind of thing. But the other part was always the techne side of being together, which in a way communism showed, which was about all the practical things that make it possible to be together. And in some ways, capitalism overtook this techne model. So it's now the dominant force in like how all the practical things happen. But it's also totally wiped out probably part of the spirituality and of an even older force, which is probably the magic. And I think that the magic space is a super important space, because it's the place where and this is actually a discussion I had with Amika from Assemble a while ago, while we were talking about children's education, is how do you stop a child losing its utopian, like children are naturally utopian, and then the education system batters it out of them. And so I think in one sense, like we look through like children's education as one sense of a space where how we can get people to keep utopian thoughts from the totally dreamlike, unreal place into the real world. And I would say this is one form of the magic space. And I would say in the case of Nasty Temple is a kind of, is that for grown-ups? Because we have to get to this childlike thing again. So Nasty Temple is a bit of a dark room. It's a BDSM parlor, and it's a Peter Pan for grown-ups.
Fantastic.
Hello, everybody. We're live at Radialsystem in Berlin with Parasite 2.0. That was quite a performance. Thank you. We'll start right in with the first audience question. This comes from Alex. How did the idea for this format come up? Everything. And what is the format? Is it a club situation?
Well, I think actually like it's quite easy to answer, because like we were supposed to be here as like this collective of collectives, so involving like 4 collectives performing together on a stage. Of course, this wasn't possible because of the pandemic, so we came out with this sort of like hybrid format, mixing like, let's say, more like TV show based like setup, you know, with like a live performance, like using and remixing like music and lots of like materials we have been collecting during these 2 years of dialogues with like the other collectives involved. And yeah, that's mainly that. Yeah, so like, you know, mixing like emails, text, music, words, videos is not such an easy task. So we came out with the idea of like just playing live, you know, like make a sort of like big remix live performance.
Yeah, it's like a DJ/poetry slam situation that is really effective. Jersey said something in the dialogue just now about this idea of freedom, free spaces, liminal spaces. Does this represent something like that to you?
I mean, yeah, it's sort of, we want to recreate some experiment of some kind of a space of autonomy. In general, in this situation, is autonomy in terms of content, in terms of mixing content, and also we think that, especially in this era of coronavirus, we need to find some of these places that can permit to mix part of the life and to refine the freedom in this sort of, autonomous zone that we can find everywhere. I mean, we try to put here inside a performance, and also to try to find a way to make a respect to all the work of another collectives, and for this we try to recreate another layer on that and put all together, and we hope that everyone allow this kind of mix.
Gert says, it's another question from the audience, this brings me back to long missed intoxicated nights on the dance floor. What were you on when you prepared the work?
Wow.
Let's say no.
No.
Of course. Yeah, no. The thing is that we had a lot of time to think about this performance. Of course, we came out with this in the recent months when we knew that would have been done this digitally, but at the same time, it was today we were here to present also the work of all the other collectives. So we tried to put all the influences, all the attitudes, all the approaches of all the other collectives involved in this project in this performance. So let's say that we tried to touch different points, different ways to communicate all the contents that are not completely part of our practice, but we try to represent them as much as we could.
Jesse asks, you mentioned the Teatro Officina in your piece. Can you tell us why? Were you there?
Yeah, we have been there. Yeah, we had a chance to go there. Yeah, like from our point of view, it's like a great example of like hacking, you know, and transforming like the theater has a structure with his own like hierarchies. So like the fact that like the public has a specific space in this theater, and it's not like just a monodirectional, you know, like way of enjoying contents, let's say. Yeah, was pretty important for us. So like this idea of like deconstructing, you know, like the theater as a structure was like actually mind-blowing for us, and like being there was a huge chance. And somehow like today we tried like to do the same, you know. So there is like this circular element and like this dolly going around constantly, like, and like the dolly somehow for us was like the public, you know. So the idea of like using different cameras, different point of views was like a part of it.
Super. Next question from Andy. Do you deem explicit and derogatory language essential to the project, and if so, why?
You know, who wants to answer to that, man?
Use them. No, to be honest, we think that in this case it was specific for this project using this kind of language as well, because we wanted to erase all that kind of politically correct that always wrap maybe some time of ways of communicating particular contents. So we decided to use the language that we always use also among us as a friends. I mean, but like, you know, these common words that sometimes it seems that they are forbidden, but in reality you use in your daily life. So we also, for the contents and for the topics, we tried to touch today. We decided to erase any kind of chains, any kind of restrictions, and we said, okay, let's go through this without any problems in terms of what also can be the reaction from the public.
Last question from Susan. It's your 10-year anniversary as a collective. How has the design landscape evolved since you founded Parasite 2.0?
Okay. It's a really complicated question also, because 10 years are a lot in this age, and we born when there was a 2008 crisis. So is for us the landscape was changing a lot during our years of university, for example in architecture, and from that time to now it is difficult to create how this landscape is changed, but it's changed a lot of time. Not only in one direction, imagine also the COVID is a rapid change that destabilizes ourselves, our ordinary life, but also crisis of 2008. change our perspective, our future disappear in a really, really less amount of time. So what we can say that we need a sort of way to be ready or try to modify our approach, to find a way to be to say something about our world, where we live, and maybe of our future.
Thank you. Thank you, Parasite 2.0. That wraps up the first night of the Forecast Festival Edition 4. Please tune in tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central European Time, for another 3 inspiring, interesting projects. Thank you.
Thank you.